So I'm going to be ranking my hardest platinum trophies. Prepare to be underwhelmed. So to pick this list, I had to look through my trophy list.
Oh, DD, oh, what it is? Oh, DD, what it is?
And it reminded me of how bad my trophy list is. You know what? I'm just me. You know, I'm just me and I've played a lot of bad games. It is what it is. I've also just remembered that I haven't done a standard YouTube intro, so these platinum trophies were so hard I wanted to sell my dog to buy someone to play them for me. Alright, you're engaged now. So I've picked my hardest 22, 23 platinum trophies throughout my trophy list, and I'm going to rank them on a scale of 5 to 10 out of difficulty as what I would give them through my experience. Everyone has, you know, we've all seen trophy guides where they've been very varied. You know, you've played a game that's an 8 out of 10, it's actually been a 6. I mean, that's not that relatable to me, but I've played games that say they're a 5 out of 10 and they're actually a 10. So that's how this is going to go down. And it's going to be in no random order, and I've just noticed Bloodborne's on there twice. So Bloodborne is so good, it's getting 2 ratings. That's right, that's right. Just notice that now, I'm so professional. But we are going to start with Bloodborne. Bloodborne was a platinum I earned in, it was pre-COVID, I think. It was like January 2020, it was the first game I actually captured footage with, because I had a capture card, and I did like a little Let's Play series, and I had a sick man bun. And I was a little intimidated by it because it was my first From Software game and my first like properly challenging game, I would say. Now this is a lot of people's first From Software game, and I think because of that people think it is by far one of the best. I've only played 2. I thought it was a pretty good game, don't get me wrong. It came out in 2015 and it felt like it came out in 2012. That's what I'm going to say. It felt really janky. It had a good system. When you get exposed to From Software, you don't really know what the fuck is going on. And there's just so little guidance, and it's got a great charm about it. You really have to discover everything yourself or use a guide. And it took me a while to get going, but when I got going, I did love the game a lot. It posed quite a good challenge, but it is a little bit game breaking, where like, I will say when I talk about Elden Ring a little bit later on, because Elden Ring had so much enemy variation, there was never just one way to kill all the enemies, whereas Bloodborne, there's a few tactics you could use, especially with the Hunter's Axe, which you could just sweep and kill most enemies from a distance, which made pretty much like hours 20 to 50 just getting through the levels actually pretty easy. But the bosses were hard. It was a difficult challenge. So it's worth mentioning as well, I'm also going to be talking about the 100% for these games. So if they have DLC and I've done the DLC, then I will talk about that as well. So because of that, I'm going to give Bloodborne, I am going to give it an 8 out of 10 for difficulty. Twice. Purely because the Chalice dungeon, which I think you can actually exploit now, where you play through the whole dungeon with half health, and you have to fight Amygdala and that guy with the 2 swords and the dog, are really, really difficult. I struggled with that guy with 2 swords for about 2 hours. We're talking like 30 attempts, and then Amygdala took me like 5 hours to beat. I think that's one of the longest I've ever spent on one singular boss. So yeah, I think it earns an 8 out of 10. And the DLC is not as hard as the base game, I would say, but it's still probably a 7 or 8 out of 10. Next, we got Crash Bandicoot. This is a game that took me 5 years to platinum. It was the 2nd or 3rd game I had on my trophy list. You know, nostalgia. You buy the game and you're like, you know, I want to play me some Crash Bandicoot. I want to play me some Crash Bandicoot. I want to experience what it was like as a kid. And I do not remember being so hard, but as a kid, I must have never got past like Aku. So I left it for 5 years. I went back to it because I kept putting off because of how hard I thought it was going to be. I'm not going to lie, it wasn't as hard as I remember it being. I did it in about 4 days. I did it in about, I want to say 15, 20 hours. The base game is, I'm not a platformer guy. That's a thing. So everyone is different, okay? People love Crash. I like the character. The platform is just not really for me. So I had a bit of a struggle with it because of that. But actually, after you get going, if you play, these are the type of games, these platformer games, where you've got to play them a lot and you've got to play them over a short period of time. If you do an hour of Crash every day, you're not really getting the muscle memory to beat it. Whereas if you were to sweat it for 4 hours a day for 5-6 days, you're going to be basically a master at it. So because of that, I'm only going to give the base platinum a 6 out of 10. However, I gave up on the Stormy Ascent trophies. I did the gem and then I could not be bothered to do the speed run. It was just taking too much out of me. It was really challenging. I haven't beat it, so it's hard for me to give that actually a ranking. So maybe in this case, I'm only going to give the platinum a ranking. I probably would have given Stormy Ascent like an 8 out of 10, but because of that, I'm only going to give Crash a 6 out of 10. I think it's hard the first 10 hours, then you get the hang of it, and then it's not too bad. Next is Elden Ring. Now, Elden Ring is one of the best games. Why is Elden Ring on there twice as well? Elden Ring is probably the best game I played this year. I'm not going to lie about it. Absolutely fantastic. I was blown away by it, and it is easier than Bloodborne, but I would say it is so much better. It takes everything that I liked about Bloodborne, but just makes it so, in an open world, and the customization and the variation in it is so fantastic. And because it's an open world, I think the problem with Bloodborne is not. This isn't a big problem, is the fact that you can only actually upgrade like one weapon to max in one playthrough, or maybe it's 2. Whereas in Elden Ring, you can actually max out about 5 weapons, so you have like all this variation to play with and mess around with, and it just makes it more rewarding. I played a lot of the game as a mage. I also played a lot of the game as using like incantations, a nice swap to using a greatsword. And, you know, I had this, the variation was there. You could play the game. And I think by the end of it, I'd maxed out about 6 or 7 different weapons, which I think just changed the game. And for me, I played most of the game as magic, and I absolutely love the magic builds. They are so fun, and so the incantation builds. So I think it's one of the best games, but it's nowhere near as hard as Bloodborne. I do think that there's only a couple of bosses I actually struggled with. So because of that, I'm actually only going to give Elden Ring a 6 out of 10. Next is Hades. Absolutely fantastic isometric over-the-top game. It was one of the best games I played in 2021. That roguelike, I would say it's a roguelite because it's not too harsh. It's got a lot of variation. The platinum did take me about 100 hours to do, but you can do it in about 50 or 60. I did a lot of like, there's a few RNG trophies which if you don't pay attention to through your playthrough, you will end up just running parts of the world over and over again. It took me like 10 hours to get the last trophy, but it's a fantastic game. I really, really enjoyed this one. But because there's a god mode, which means that basically you get like 20-30% extra health for most of the playthroughs. Every time you die, you gain like 2% extra health. It's not too challenging. I would say Hades is a 5 out of 10. Okay, next is Mountain Blade Warband. Now, I only include this one because of the fact that it's an ultra rare trophy. I think it's the second rarest platinum trophy I have at like 1.12%, or maybe it's my rarest at 1.01% rarity. Now, this game is hard because of its time commitment. You have to beat the game, which is like, it's an open world RPG, kind of like settlement, army management, supply management game. It's very varied, and to get the platinum, you basically have to beat the game as a woman, which makes it a little bit harder doing certain things. You have to like form a faction. It's going to take you, I think, if you're really smart, but because the game is so complicated, I don't even think a guide will help you get through it too much. I think to get every offline trophy, you're looking at about 100, maybe 110 hours. But the online it's like 50 kills with an axe, 50 kills with a throwing dagger, 50 kills mounted, 50 kills mounted enemies while you're grounded. You basically can't do it without a boosting partner. Without a boosting partner, if the online was even active, but when I was doing it 2 years ago, there was only ever like 8 people online. You probably would take me like 1,000 hours to do, maybe 200, 300 hours of actual natural play. Even with a boosting buddy, it took about 30 to 50 hours to get through all that grind, which is a long time to be just sweating out trophies. Shout out DeadmanWalking for being my boosting buddy on that and helping me get maybe my rarest platinum. So that's why it makes a list. Because of the brain numbingness of the boosting, that is one of the difficult things. It's only getting a 5 out of 10, but it still makes a list. Next, we got PS VR Worlds, which was one of the hardest platinums I did for a long, long time. It is because there's a few modes. The luge mode, so it's like 5 small games in one. The luge mode, you play luge, and you have to get like these high scores, and you have to like get 3 races in a row with a high score, and I think the fastest time you need is about 10 minutes, which means that you are playing luge over and over again, and it takes about 20 hours to get like 3 trophies for this luge mode. And then there's the danger ball, which is basically like ping pong but with your head. Really difficult. The ball becomes faster and faster and faster, and I think this might be my rarest platinum at like 0.8%. I'm not too sure. It was really tough. I did do it when I was like in 2019. I am a better gamer now, so I probably could get through it faster, but at the time I'm going to stand strong that it is a 9 out of 10. Okay, next we've got Remnant from the Ashes. Fantastic game. It is like a From Software game, that kind of style, but with weapons. It is so good. So much weapon variation, so much mod variation. The mod stuff is just so fantastic. I am still looking forward to playing Remnant 2. It's on the list. A few people have commented on my videos saying they want to see me play it. It is on the list. I had so much fun playing it with I had played with my brother and I played with my friend Connor. Absolute blast. It really got me back into loving co-op games. The actual platinum is probably a 7 out of 10. It's not too difficult. It's not as hard as Bloodborne. It's probably harder than Elden Ring. It's shorter, but it's harder. I would say the enemies, there's a lot more variation compared to like From Software games. If you play a From Software game, you'll notice that 99% of the time you only ever face one enemy or a couple of enemies, but there's a couple of bosses, but there's never enemies running around, whereas Remnant has a lot of bosses and enemies running around. So it's like constant movement, constant fire. And the areas are a lot bigger because there's gunplay involved, so there's like multi-tiered levels, so there's a lot to learn, and it's very rewarding and fun. But the DLC, the survival mode, is absolutely brutal, and I stand by it still being the hardest trophy, maybe the hardest trophy I've ever earned. Basically, you get dropped into a world, you have no weapons, you have a small amount of currency to buy one weapon and one mod, and you have to survive 10 rounds. Each round is running through a level, facing a boss at the end. Every 3 you face a world boss, which is a bigger boss, and not only are the bosses, the world levels up in difficulty, so the bosses level up in difficulty as well. So if you face a boss on level 1, it will be easier than the same boss on level 10. They will have more movesets to do more damage. So not only do you have to learn how to beat every boss, you have to learn how to beat every boss at every difficulty through 1 through 10. So there's a lot to learn, and it is just random, it's messy, and a whole run takes about an hour and 20 minutes, maybe an hour. So, you know, you're playing and playing, getting to like level 8, 45 minutes, 50 minutes in, sweating and failing and doing it again and again. It is, yeah, one of the hardest trophies I have ever earned. So I'm actually going to give Remnant, the DLC, a 10 out of 10 in difficulty. It is a tough challenge. Next, we've got Sonic Team Racing. Now, I include this one because it's an ultra rare platinum, and I did have a lot of issues with the cooperative. And by that, I mean the AI. So it's a team-based racing game, which is fine. And if there was no team-based, if the team points didn't count in this game, it would only be a 3 or 4 out of 10. The guide says it's a 4. It's not a 4 out of 10 because you can do races on the hardest difficulty, and then your AI partners can come last, which means that you just lose the race. And it's like, it's so difficult because you're carrying these teammates through and through, and it's like you have to learn to basically support your team. And I ended up playing as like Knuckles, who was the slower of the 3. So like, there's Knuckles, Sonic, and Tails, just because if the computer was Knuckles, he would always come last. So I was playing as the worst car in on hard mode, making it difficult for myself while still trying to help the other 2 through. It is annoyingly hard, but it's not too hard. It's not as hard as these other games, but it has a lot of annoyance to it, which makes it a little bit unenjoyable. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. I don't know why some of these games are on twice, but we're just going to roll with it. We're going to roll with it. Next is Alien Elite Fireteam. By far, one of the hardest platinum trophies I have ever done. It really pushed me and my brother and my friend Connor to the limit. Apparently it's been downgraded to an 8 out of 10 now on PSNP. There must be easier tactics and stuff now, but literally the hardest difficulty, we were like running the same 30-40 minute levels over and over again, trying to search online, speaking to people. We were actually like actively messaging and trying to befriend people who we were playing with just to help us through it and to get advice on how to run certain levels, because some of it was so hard. But it was really rewarding, and again, the team platinums, when they're co-op, when they're challenging, are just so rewarding when you finally beat them. Plus, there's a little bit of a glitch on the collectibles. So like collectibles 1 through 25, say, but like level 1 will have collectible 6 and level 2 will have collectible 4. So you'll be missing collectible 6, you won't know where it is, and it's actually because it appears in level 1. And if you pick up collectibles in other people's games, it kind of crashes your game. So you got to be careful with that. You're pretty much better off just doing a normal run by yourself first, getting all the collectibles. Then by then you would have leveled up your characters enough, so then you can then start doing the harder levels with your friends. It does ruin it a little bit, but you've got to do a lot of grind towards the end anyway, so you're better off just doing that to start with, maybe spending 10 hours beating the game. It's probably 6 hours, 7 hours, it's a short game, but you have to do it 4 times, and that's if you can actually do it. It takes about 70-80 hours, plus the DLC is not hard, but there's even more grind involved. I'm going to give Alien Fireteam, I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. I don't quite think it was as hard as the survival mode on Remnant. Next is Call of Duty Modern Warfare Remastered. Now the guides against this is like a 3 out of 10. It is if you use an exploit. So to beat the Veteran, you can start the game on easy, play at the last checkpoint, quit out, and reload it on Veteran, and then beat the level. So you can cheese it. I didn't cheese it, so because of that, the final level, Mile High Club, is so damn hard. It took me about, you can actually still watch the live stream in my old playlists of me trying to beat it. I think it took me 350 attempts to beat the Mile High Club, about 10 hours to beat a 30-second section, and that's not to mention as well that the obstacle course at the end is still quite challenging. If Mile High Club wasn't there with the obstacle course, I'd probably give it a 6 out of 10, but because of the obstacle course, I am going to give Call of Duty Modern Warfare an 8 out of 10. It is quite the challenge. Next is Ghost Runner. Now, this game is excellent. By 505 Games, Ghost Runner 2 is out now, or it's coming out very soon. I had a lot of fun with it. I really enjoyed it. I haven't done the DLC yet. I'm kind of like, you might be the same as me. When it comes to going back to DLC, I'm always like, oh, I just can't ever be bothered to do it. But I had a lot of fun with it, and it's hard to start with. A lot of these games, which are quite different, it's a parkour first-person fighting game. It seems really hard to start with. The first 8 to 10 hours, there's always a big jump, but after hour 10, you're literally just flying through it. And because the reload time is so quick, yeah, I might got stuck on a little encounter 20-30 times, but I beat it in 15 minutes because the reload time, especially on the PS5, is just so fast. So because of that, I'm actually going to give Ghost Runner, I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10. Yeah, it could be harder. We've actually only got 2 games left. I don't know why I said there was 22. There's actually only like 13. Next, we have Hotline Miami. Fuck me, what a game. Goddamn, Vault Boy Steve was like, I love this game called Hotline Miami. You should definitely play it. And I've never let him live it down. However, I am a little tempted to do Hotline Miami 2. I feel like it would be my Everest because of how much I struggle with Hotline Miami. It's a cool retro game. People didn't like it when I said I didn't like the music because when you're grinding out a 10-hour platinum for 20 hours, everything annoys you. Everything makes you want to just punch your own face. So because of that, I was like stressed. First, you have to get kills with every weapon at close range and long range. There's like 30 weapons. There's no tracker for it at all. So I had to make a spreadsheet to tick it off, which is really annoying to start with. Every level was just so unforgiving, and on the hardest difficulty, like the enemies, the AIs, so it's over top shooter, they lock on you as soon as you turn through a door. They have like this lock on, but the lock on doesn't really work for you because you just lock on to enemies through walls. So like there'll be 3 enemies coming towards you, and one of them will be behind a door, and you'll lock on to the one behind the door, so the other 2 will just come to a door and blow your brains out, and everything's one-shot kill. So it was really frustrating. It really tested me, and I think this might be like showing my lack of skill because I think the guy says it's like a 5 out of 10. Personally, I think Hotline Miami is a 7 out of 10. It's definitely harder than Crash Bandicoot, purely because of how brutal and unforgiving it is. So I'm going to do Last of Us next. I'm going to leave Marvel Capcom till the end. Last of Us Remastered, we're talking about the whole 100%, so that's a grounded run as well as Left Behind and stuff like that. It is a challenge, this game. It's probably, looking at this list, it is the only game, other than probably, I would say only Hades and Last of Us this applies to. It's the only game where I loved the difficulty through and through. I wasn't like kind of like towards the end, oh, when I get this done. I absolutely loved The Last of Us Remastered, and I loved the grounded mode, and because of that, it's still one of my best games, favourite games of all time. But it is a challenge, but the grounded mode is so rewarding and it feels so real. Naughty Dog have this way of making games feel realistic and you get invested in the characters. I've never been more invested in the game than I was in Last of Us. And the grounded mode was absolutely fantastic. But it was quite a challenge. It took a lot of attempts. I'm going to give Last of Us Remastered, all the Platinum and the DLC, a 7 out of 10. Okay, final game is Marvel vs. Capcom. Now, I said Remnant from the Ashes. The DLC was one of the hardest trophies I ever earned, and there was a bit of hesitation when I said it because Marvel vs. Capcom is the hardest Platinum trophy I have ever earned in my entire life. The guy who wrote the guide, I think he has like Platinums in Street Fighter 5, like all these difficult games, he gave it a 5 out of 10 because there's no way this game is a 5 out of 10. I'm not a fighter gamer, I don't play them, so there's obviously that to bear in mind. And I think maybe if you'd played them a little bit, you had a bit more experience in them, you might have said maybe it was a 6 or a 7, but for me, going into this as a completely new fighter gamer, I played Tekken when I was a kid, I found it so hard, and it is the only game I've ever played where I didn't think I could get the Platinum, because games like Crash Bandicoot and Bloodborne, for example, are learning levels and learning timing. That's what they are. And, you know, no matter how hard a From Software game is, if you understand the enemy, you can beat the enemy. Marvel vs. Capcom has a combo trophy, so you have to learn these combos and execute them at the right time and the right speed. And basically, you have to press the controller so fast. There was a time when I didn't think it was possible for me to be able to actually physically do it because I was like, I don't have the skill. I physically don't have it in my hands to move fast enough because it was so difficult, and I finally did it, and I have now felt such accomplishment, to be fair, in my life. And I'm not saying I wouldn't go for another one. Like, Marvel vs. Capcom 3 is tempting me, but for Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, you have to max out 5 of the characters combos. Marvel vs. Capcom 3, you have to do it with all 23 characters or something, so it's ridiculous. But I have read in the forums, it's actually, the combos are a little bit easier, but I wouldn't know until I gave it a try. So because of that, Marvel vs. Capcom is a 10 out of 10 for me for the Platinum. So if you haven't played any of these games, Plat Bro, you know, if you don't know me, if you're new, welcome. But if you do know me, you know that I'm not going to sit here and pretend to be the best gamer in the world. I would say I'm probably slightly above average. So this is how I would rate all of these games. So if you're interested in any of these games, this is kind of the rating that I would give them. Bear in mind, Remnant from the Ashes is only a 10 because of the DLC trophies, and Call of Duty Modern Warfare is only an 8 if you do it legitimately. If you do the exploit, it's like a 4. Some of these games I have covered in videos, some of the games I haven't, because, you know, I've been gaming for a long time. I've been trophy hunting coming up 6 years now, and then obviously achievement hunting before then. If you like this video and you want to see more of this kind of ranking or just talking about my trophies, let me know in the comments down below. Like the video. If it gets 500 likes, I'll consider doing something similar like this again. And let me know if you have any 10 out of 10 platinum trophies. Not 10 out of 10 platinum trophies by guides, 10 out of 10 platinum trophies that you would say are 10 out of 10. Alright, thanks very much for watching. Peace.